And just like that, we're back, baby. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to a brand new section, which is Joey Presents podcast episodes here at Fight Bible. Today, I was lucky enough to have a sit down with a legend that is Salvatore Pace, third degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, world champion, Naga champion, British champion, European champion. He's done it all. He knows everyone. He's trained with the best. He is a living legend. The guy has helped so many people over the last 30 years in this game, and I really hope you guys enjoy the conversation that we are about to have. I really enjoyed it. I hope you do too. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's get on with the chat. Finally actually get to do this.
We did it, man.
It took what, like 2 years of pretty much talking about it. Because I've only been with Gracie for 2 years.
Right.
Like pretty much just before COVID, my professor Kevin started in my local gym, which was amazing because I didn't have to really move anywhere.
What gym was that?
TT.
Yes,
so the fitness center in Calm. They built like a combat cage area and they were planning on doing martial arts classes. It never ever came to anything, but they were going to rent the space out to martial arts instructors. So Kev took a space because he was looking for his second school. I trained with him probably about 15 times in Marlborough, pre-COVID, and it was my first kind of taste of gi-based jiu-jitsu, as I'd done MMA for many years with Brad at Dragon's Lair in Melksham, but I kind of was like, I wanted the accolades. I wanted some progression knowledge. I wanted a belt. Sounds a bit McDojo-y, but I wanted a belt.
Brad is a purple belt under myself.
Under you, exactly. Yeah, and he does tell me the stories many times about your trips out to Naga and things like that.
Yeah, we had some good trips.
Yeah. He's often quoted your reference of your best corner advice, which was he said he had someone's back, and you just leant forward and went, "Do what I told you." And that was it.
Well, he should have remembered what I told
exactly, but that was the truth. Like, remember what I told you. And it was like, good. Remember what I told you. It's like, good. That sounds like Salvo.
We actually had a really good time. We went to Paris at that time. I was going to compete, but I broke my finger. On my very last training session, the day before we flew out. I had competed there before, and I had won the Naga black belt division there before, and it was just a lot of fun, you know. And Nick Tuckett and myself and Brad, we shared this room.
I've shared a room with Brad before.
I mean?
It's not fun. That guy snores. It's not fun. That guy snores something wicked.
Two great big dudes.
Tuckett's a machine. He's a big boy.
Yeah, both of them.
That's a lot of protein farts in that room, especially if
really,
Tuckett was on.
Really.
To break your finger the day before comp must have been infuriating.
Yeah, it sucked because I had really trained hard. And I was in good shape, and I was, ready to go out there and do my best.
This was pre-UFC, wasn't it, for Brad?
This was pre-UFC for Brad.
2011?
It was 2011 because I competed there in 2010 and won.
You were 36, my age now.
Yeah.
And you were out there smashing Naga. Fuck me, I'm busy breaking bones and healing from dirty injuries from nothing.
No, I actually competed all the way up till I was 41.
Wow. And
to be honest, I always say to people, I think I felt at my best between the age of 35 to 38, 39.
Best technically or best physically?
Both.
Yeah?
Both.
But you've had a long career.
Physically for sure.
You've been in this game for a long time.
A little while. Physically for sure, I felt like I was well balanced. But when I say well balanced, you got to put that together with being well balanced mentally, physically, emotionally, and technically. Because when you create that package, if emotionally you're all over the place, it doesn't really work. And if mentally you're not being able to focus, it's tricky, right?
Yeah.
So I always enjoyed doing a lot of yoga as well.
Yeah, well, that's one of the main things that jiu-jitsu teaches is obviously it's the mindfulness, especially with Gracie Barra. Like, it's propagated through our entire kind of ethos is look after your mind and your body will follow.
For sure.
And vice versa, at the same way. If you're struggling with mental issues, look after your body and your mind will follow.
100%. Look, I'm 48 years old now, right? I train as much as I can.
Tell me about it. Your schedule is disgusting.
Thank you. I train as much as I can. I teach in several of my schools, although mainly I'm right here at Gracie Barra Bath. This is the HQ for the Southwest UK of Gracie Barra. And I try and keep as fit and as healthy as my schedule allows me to, you know. But the one thing that for sure I think has changed is how I approach things mentally. How one approaches things mentally has to change with age. Because if you don't evolve mentally, things are not going in the right direction. You must evolve as much as you do physically, mentally in Jiu-Jitsu. Because if you don't, you're missing something. You're really missing something. And this is the one thing that I'm enjoying. I'm enjoying the new, the evolved version of myself, of how I think about things, how I process things, how I train. You know, I train for fun now. I don't train to win.
Absolutely. Well, back in the day, though, I can imagine you were putting yourself through the ringer. I watched one of the podcasts of you back when you were talking about sharing rooms with like Fabricio Verdum and Shogun Rua, sorry, yeah, and like the main boys that were Pride, the beginning UFC guys that were going out to Brazil and learning their jiu-jitsu. I'm surprised you never thought, fuck it, UFC, because you were Muay Thai, black belt jiu-jitsu, winning world championships, and you were surrounded by the guys who were there. They were at the show.
For sure. Look, I'll be really honest with you, right? I fought a few times in MMA in the beginning. I had mixed success. What I realized really quickly was that nobody was going to be making any money. And although I'm not driven by money, I'm not. But I have to survive and I have to, support my family and so forth. So when I realized that there wasn't any money in MMA, I focused myself 100% on Jiu-Jitsu, and I focused myself 100% on being the best version of myself that I could be, but also giving my students the best guidance that I could give. You know, because at the end of the day, I know guys, first-hand guys. I know people, Spencer Fisher, Spencer the Kingfisher, really good friend of mine. Actually, I tied his black belt around his waist in Chicago a couple of years ago together with Professor Carlos. Spencer had a long career in the UFC. I think he had 17 fights. Spencer's really struggling now.
Oh yeah, it's a brutal game. You know, it's horrendous.
He's really struggling, not just mentally. His whole life has taken, a little bit of a tricky turn, so to speak. Because as an MMA fighter, as a high-end athlete, where you are receiving concussions every day. Yeah. And
you can deny it all they want. Like having been best friends with Brad for as many years as I have, I've seen it go wrong. I've seen where he is now and how his mental capacity is, his compulsions, his addictions, his desire for quick highs and his instinctual responses to stress are all over the place. The sort of thing which a normal person would go, why are you doing that? But I haven't had 1,000 concussions, and I also haven't had the performance anxiety that he went through. And I can imagine it would have, but like I said, was it hard though? Because you were surrounded by the guys. So you're personal friends with the Gracies, and the fact that Royce went in there and destroyed the first couple of UFCs and was just like, set the world on fire.
Let me just finish off with Spencer. Spencer is an amazing human being, family man, beautiful children, beautiful wife, great guy. And Spencer is struggling today. He has to teach cardio kickboxing in order to kind of make ends meet. His wife obviously works, but what an amazing human being. But his whole life is on the line all the time. Yeah. Because he received such damage that at any point, anything could happen to him. If he gets hit, anything could happen.
That shows you're smarter than the average man, because most of the guys surrounded in that environment would have gone, yeah, fuck it. I'll dive in, I'll have a go, especially if you're seeing the success which Royce did.
I loved that time. I loved that time. I spent time in Brazil. I was living with Nino Chambry, who was the jiu-jitsu coach for the Shooter Box Academy. Many people have heard this story before. So I was training with those guys every day, with Shogun Rua, Murillo Ninja, the top of the top of that time. Yeah. Shogun was the Pride, what do they call it, middleweight Grand Prix winner. and then went on to become UFC light heavyweight champion. Ninja was the Elite XC middleweight champion. So, you know, these guys were super high level. Vanderlei would come in and out. You know, he was an interesting cat too. But at the same time, at that particular time when I had gone to Brazil, I went there for jiu-jitsu. I didn't go there for MMA. I was there for jiu-jitsu. So I took everything that I could take on board, you know, watching the guys around me, learning from the most amazing people that I learned from. Carlos Lemos Jr. being, you know, my professor.
How old was he?
How old is Carlos?
Because you must be quite relatively close in age.
We are. I'm a little older than him.
Really?
Yeah.
So he was your main professor?
He's always been my professor.
Yeah. But obviously, for you being older, it's kind of almost as far as everybody in my gym is younger than Kev, apart from the guys who are kind of just doing it for hobby.
Yeah.
But for you being a competitive athlete, winning world titles, winning European championships, winning British titles, competing Naga, to have a younger professor, was there ever any ego in any of those places?
No.
Not
Carlos,
even banter, lad banter.
We have banter. We have the most amazing relationship, you know. This is how it goes. I trained before I met Carlos. I wrestled before I met Carlos. I grappled before I met Carlos. When I met Carlos, I put the gi on. Do you understand how this is going? So when I met Carlos, this is when I put the gi on, to the point where I got my black belt in 4.5 years.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's serious. But
sure.
But the fact that it shows your ability as a martial artist to be able to adapt to a brand new sport. Because I've watched some of the other podcasts, and like you said, MMA and Jiu-Jitsu was kind of in its infancy, especially in the UK.
It was.
So you kind of, like I said, you're watching VHS tapes, you're studying techniques that you just kind of, like we do now with Instagram, kind of winging it, putting it into practice, adding it into a game and kind of figuring out what works.
I was very lucky to be doing the right thing at the right time without even realizing that was the right thing at the right time.
Yeah.
Because
amazing foresight, realistically. If you could go back,
perhaps,
I doubt you probably would change anything because you were there at the epicenter of the eruption of jiu-jitsu.
Well, wrestling, for instance.
We're still lacking that in this country
But
massively.
people have only just begun to wrestle now because they realize that in ADCC, if you have no wrestling, you are going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
Right? So every jiu-jitsu player is trying to catch up with wrestling. Well, my journey was a little bit the other way around almost, you know. I wrestled before I ever put a gi on. So when I went to put my gi on, I already could hold my own. You know, it wasn't like I was brand new to grappling. I was very accustomed to grappling. And this is one of the reasons why it took me a lot less than most people to get my black belt. But having said that, I dedicated myself 100%.
Well, just looking at your travel plan, the fact that you moved to Brazil, but that with competition, but were you mainly based in Rio, wasn't it?
No, so I was living in Sicily at the time.
Okay.
I was here, then I went back to Sicily, then from Sicily I went to Brazil, then from Brazil I went back to Italy, then I would come back here, then I would go to America. I traveled a lot.
Employment-wise at this time, how were you affording everything?
So employment-wise, in the very early stages of everything, I was working. I was working on funding myself. After that, after I moved back home, I actually opened the very first Gracie Barra Academy in Italy.
Yeah, that was in Sicily, wasn't it?
Yeah, correct. That was about 2004.
That's a hell of an accolade, to say that you essentially brought jiu-jitsu to Italy.
There was jiu-jitsu there before me.
But there's jiu-jitsu and there's jiu-jitsu. Gracie Barra is the biggest franchise in the game.
For sure, without a doubt. But, you know, we can say that I brought it here to this area of the UK.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because when I came back to the UK, the area here didn't have any Gracie Barra schools at that time. Bringing Gracie Barra Jiu-Jitsu to the southwest of the UK, Carlos had already been here. Carlos and I had already had a relationship in terms of establishing, you know, he was my professor and I was his student. But when I returned, because I'd left, and then when I returned to the UK, that was the plan, is, you know, what we have today. And
was there already a franchise idea for Gracie at this point? Because I know you've also mentioned about the fact that you didn't have your own gis, it was a patch, you just kind of sewed it onto any gi.
Correct.
So the fact that you had, like I said, the foresight to go, we can franchise this? Was there a business plan?
I cannot take the credit for the franchise, right? I can take credit for helping grow Gracie Barra in the area. But the whole franchise situation, that was something that happened in America. Master Carlos and the team, you know, they were the masterminds behind all of that. Curriculums came in and uniforms.
Was that after the fact, obviously?
That was after I started, for sure, yeah. After.
But that shows that essentially what you were doing might have laid some of the blueprint for the rest of the world. Because if they're looking at you and going, well, Salvo's out in England and he's doing it this way, and you're all kind of, you're in a nice little family of ideas, and you're all giving each other inspiration.
Without a doubt, without a doubt.
That's incredible.
Professor Carlos, to be honest with you, first showed me his idea of a curriculum back in 2005.
Wow, that's very.
The curriculums
very
didn't
old.
become curriculums until 2009. So Professor Carlos actually had a curriculum that he had put down and showed me this in 2005. I actually still have a copy of this.
Wow, that'd be amazing to look at.
It is amazing.
Amazing to see the evolution.
It is amazing because, you know, up until that point, we didn't have a curriculum in Jiu-Jitsu.
Well, I don't think curriculums existed in martial arts realistically, apart from in like the McDojo style karate, doing your katas and stuff.
Sure,
But that's old, that's very old fashioned. But MMA definitely didn't have. It was wing
No,
it.
MMA definitely didn't.
It was
have
wing it.
And at that point, we were all just trying to find out what worked and what didn't work, you know. And you know, I think today the curriculums that we have today within Gracie Barra are huge.
Yeah, they're very inclusive.
Very inclusive because at the end of the day, yes, it might say guard, pass, knee and belly mount, but that's all it says.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I, as a jiu-jitsu professor, have to come in and do my bit with the guard, pass, knee and belly mount. Now, whatever that is to me could be something very different to the next professor. You know,
I love that. I love that fluid ability though. Like Gracie Barra, outside of Gracie Barra, has got a very strange cultist kind of idea. Because of that idea, like you said, we have strict schedules, we have a format to our lessons, and they say that sometimes that can cause like a religious kind of ideology. I don't see it like that in the slightest. I think once you're inside, you realise that the club, being in the club, is actually better than being out of the club.
For me, it's all about professionalism.
Yeah.
You know.
What is a standard?
I want to turn up on time. I want my students to start their lineup on time. We are going to do a class which finishes on time, and the content of the class is going to be the highest level that I can possibly deliver. Because we live in a modern world, and a modern world gives you 1 hour lunch break, and you have X amount of time, X amount of you know, time to dedicate to your jiu-jitsu and get back to work. Now, if I start playing with your schedule, you're no longer going to be able to train.
I think it also kind of keeps the elements of what you're learning in the correct order.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, if you're, when I used to do MMA back in the day, you kind of rock up and it's like, well, what are we doing tonight? And the coach would just pull something out.
Whatever he felt
whatever he kind of felt like, whatever he saw on the weekend that was interesting. Okay, yeah, sometimes that does kind of flow into, like you said, it's up to a professor's interpretation to create the lesson plan on the fly. But if it's just a random technique which doesn't lead on to anything else and it's not flowing correctly and it's just all right, now put some gloves on, guys, start punching each other in the head. I think that, like you said, the format is a great way for those students who actually do pay attention to be able to study it and do their own homework. Practice, warm up, do the right things to follow on to the day's lesson.
Well, this is the beauty of Gracie Barra and having such an amazing organization behind us is that, you know, we have a huge online platform.
Yeah, because obviously you've got the training platforms as well.
GB Online,
yeah,
you know, GB Institute, these things. We have so many amazing things. We have the instructor certification program, which ensures that, you know, you coming in as a newer guy who wants to go on to become a teacher or even just understand more about what we're doing. You do the instructor certification program and you learn so much about who you are, who you are as a martial artist, so to speak. You know, who are your what is your lineage, what is your background, who put these things in place, who is helping us evolve. So you learn so much, so much.
That's the thing, like you said, lineage for Gracie Barra, especially under you. I think you're kind of like a bit of a myth almost. Yeah. Because you're so approachable and so friendly that we kind of forget. We take you for granted. You like the really hot misses that you just kind of like, yeah, she's fine. And then you occasionally stare at somebody else and you're like, oh, okay, nice. But we forget that you are essentially, like I said, one of the originators of Jiu-Jitsu in the UK. You are a direct lineage back to the Gracies.
100%.
With literally no stop points in between.
There's no
like
stop points.
In 20 years' time, Kev might still be doing something. He might have 4 instructors underneath him, and his students will be going, our coach once trained under Salvo, and Salvo trained under Carlos, and Carlos trained under the Gracies. Yeah. Whereas we are literally directly underneath you, which is kind of like Jiu-Jitsu royalty to an extent. Which no, it's not pumping your fucking tooting your horn too much, bud.
No, man, I appreciate that you realize that, and I
100%.
appreciate that you understand that. Because for me, my lineage means so much to me, right? Because, of course, every single one of my stripes, from white belt to where I am at right now, comes from Professor Carlos. With that also comes the guidance of Master Carlos. So, you know, I've always been blessed because Professor Carlos has always put me right in the mix of everything. So it wasn't like, okay, yeah, this is Salvo, he's my student. I'm not going to expose him to my professor because my professor, you know, he could like my professor more than he likes me.
Yeah, the sense of nepotism and being promoted amongst...
Because a lot of people do that.
Yeah,
and a lot of people feel those type of insecurities. I don't have those insecurities.
We're in an ego-based game.
I don't have those insecurities.
No. So that's quite amazing.
I've been in Jiu-Jitsu long enough. I trust my professor blindfolded. I trust him with my life.
Quite literally, when you're on the mat that many times with them and at the level in which you're rolling, you are literally trusting him with your life.
I trust him with my life on everything. You know, I trust him with my children. I trust him with my family.
But I think the environment in here builds that relationship. Testing your relationship, the ability
but our
to
relationship goes back 25 years. It doesn't, you know, it's not a new relationship,
exactly.
right? So we've got to know each other over the years. We traveled together. We've ate together. We've slept in the same room. We've, you know, we've done so much together over the years.
Shared blood, sweat, and tears.
You know what I mean? I hug his kids. He hugs my kids. My kids call him uncle. Yeah. You know, it's all of that. There's so much. Just so you understand, I have a young student right now who's a young protege of mine. Cypress Hughes, who is
dude's insane,
incredible in terms of, you know, the
is he in today?
That
right?
he is
he float during the day?
He'll be here this evening. He trained with us yesterday. Yeah. But you know, in terms of the athlete that he is and the potential that he has, I think it's sky's the limit. Yeah. But now we have the opportunity where Cypress in the summer will go and stay with Carlos in Chicago. Now, if I was the type of guy that was worried about exposing my young athlete to my professor, just in case he takes credit. Yeah. I don't have that with my professor. My victories are his victories. His victories are my victories. You know.
When did Cypress start? How old was he?
How old was Cypress? I think he was 6 or 7 years old.
Jesus Christ. See, this is one of the things I kind of wanted to get into, is that I am not a natural martial artist. Like, I hang around with Brad. Brad is he's more natural than me, but he will openly say he's very unathletic. He didn't do any sports in school. He found MMA because he wanted to get in the Marines. Right. And he Googled, what's the best sports to get you fitter or harder or stronger? And it was either rugby, American football, or fighting. Yeah. So he went to the first version of Dragon's Lair in Melksham, which was in a kung fu school. Yeah. With swords on the walls and things, and it was not...
I think I met Brad when he was about 18, you know?
Yeah, so he started kind of around about then, and he just kind of fell in love with it, but he was always a scrapper. He always has been. When I used to go to the nightclubs with him back in the day, it wasn't a night that went by. He'd usually end up getting dragged out by some doorman or helping the doorman throw people out. Right. I remember one pub, the doorman actually said, if Brad starts fighting tonight, nobody touch him, because he will hurt you. And they had to warn the doorman that Brad was coming in. So he always had that aggression level, which was really great. I didn't. I am honestly the most calm-minded person, and I didn't do any fighting at school. I didn't fight with my brothers. I never fought with my cousins. So the idea of violence scared me at a young age. And when I got to about 16, I got punched for the first time at school, and I had no idea how to handle myself. I had no idea. Literally, it caused a fight or flight reaction in me. I had an adrenaline spike. I went into shock. It just scared the crap out of me. And I avoided it until I was 19 and I started training with Brad. Because I was in the gym and I was put on a bit of weight. I went from being 5'5" to 6'1" in 2 years. Just
that never happened to me.
Hit that growth spurt like crazy. So I went from being the shy kind of weak kid to being the bigger, taller kid. I had a bit of more confidence about me, so I started training. And I did 2 classes of MMA a week under Dragon's Lair for a couple of years, and I disappeared off to America for a couple of years, and I came back at like 23. I then did a couple of years on the side. I love the sport. I understand the sport. I can commentate and I can break down pretty much all aspects of the sport just from a passion for it. But at the same time, because I didn't train from a young age, I break really easy. I break so fucking easy. Like Cyprus, like at that age, at 6 years old, if you're being hyperextended and moving and rolling and bouncing off stuff, your body just gets used to those impacts. Yeah. To the point where when you get to 18 years old, it's like you get your arm hyperextended, you're like, I can go a couple more inches, that's fine. Yeah. For me, if my arm starts to do here, Kev clicked my elbow the other week, he just went for a belly down and I went to pull in and he straightened it slightly off that angle. My forearm is still hurting now. And I'm just like, I might take a couple of weeks off. You know, like.
No, well, this is where I believe in training smart. I believe in training smart. I train every day of the week when I can.
Because you have the previous experience and you've built those years of essentially conditioning.
Yeah, well, I didn't always train smart. This is the thing, right? You know, I didn't always train smart. I had to be guided and also learn from my own experiences.
Did you ever get injured bad?
Did I ever get injured bad? Not on the mat, no. I never got injured. I've had 2 knee surgeries. I've broken both my feet, fingers, bits and pieces,
it's just
nose.
Causality, isn't it? It's just
but
part of it.
Realistically speaking, none of this has ever happened on the mat.
Really?
Honestly.
How you break your fingers and stuff?
Well, actually, no, the fingers on the mat.
Yeah, that's fingers are in geese.
Fingers
they
on the
snap
mat,
very easy.
mat. But I had 2 knee surgeries, and I believe that they came mainly from running.
Really?
So, yeah, because I still enjoyed running a lot. One of my feet I broke when I was out running. The other foot I broke in Lisbon, coming down the stairs, going to coach my students. And then the paramedics are looking to take me to hospital. Yeah. And my students are about to go on, right? And they said, look, what do you want us to do? I said, carry me to mat 6. So I put my foot up and I continue coaching my students.
Again, that's that kind of jiu-jitsu mentality. Like the mental fortitude to stop you from quitting from things like pressure, I still don't have. Because, like I said, I'm only new to this and I have 33 years of habit of not being under that much pressure that I'm now starting to have to find my boundaries. Old dog, new tricks, I guess is kind of the idea.
So there is a hashtag that Professor Carlos uses that I've adopted, and I probably use it more than he does. But like I said, luckily he doesn't mind because we have that type of relationship where, you know, we're good that way. And his hashtag is hard to beat, impossible to break. Yeah. Now, hard to beat, impossible to break. How do we translate that? Hard to beat. I can be defeated on the mat, but I can't be broken. No. Mentally, I cannot be broken. And, you know, I've been through many things in my life at this stage, and hard to beat, impossible to break is definitely the most amazing phrase that anybody can use.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think this is one of those things that martial arts in general will teach you, you know.
See, I didn't have that. Yeah, I didn't get that experience.
If you hang around long enough in martial arts, if you go through the trials and tribulations of life, which we will all go through at some point, I think that, you know, you do become resilient. And you don't just become resilient physically, 100%. You become resilient mentally. Yeah. So
I'm getting there. I'm learning it as we go.
I can tap.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's not a big deal for me to tap. It's not something that I do regularly, by the way. But you know, if I get caught, I have no problem in tapping. Yeah. If you look back at the old matches, you know, you touched on Master Hoist Gracie earlier on, but if you look back at Hoist's matches, man, he went through hell in some of those matches, but he never quit.
No, he was also against people who probably didn't have that level of fortitude that he had.
No.
Years and years and years of doing jiu-jitsu and being under crushing pressure on the regular is completely different than to being out of breath doing Muay Thai. Completely different. you get pinned in the corner,
It's different.
you can clinch, and then you can release a referee or save you, whatever. You're underneath someone for 5 minutes,
It's different.
and they're trying to crush the living hell out of you, and also break bones, choke you unconscious, and they're paying attention to every single minute movement that you make. You can't. That creates a level of awareness and anxiety, also anxiety as well, which you have to learn to control.
Yeah.
Which is, like I said, I never had as a kid. I had such a pampered little upbringing. Like I grew up in my parents' house, 2-parent home. My dad worked, mum stayed home. I had no problems at all. Like, I know you had a bit more of a harder upbringing.
Sure,
You said, like going back to, like, my dad's Italian.
Isn't he? Right, yeah, of course
he's Italian. But he had, he's the softest thing in the world. He still calls punching someone thumping them. And it's like, you're definitely from the 70s, bud. Like, your weight, I cannot take any man advice from my dad in the slightest.
Yeah, no, I grew up in Sicily, and Sicily is a very lively place, you know. And as we were kids, and I was in scraps every day of the week.
Yeah, see, I can imagine, because my uncles were like that. My granddad was a bit of a scrapper. My granddad's from Ancona, my grandmother was from Calabria, and they met in Chippenham.
Wow, unbelievable.
Yeah, I know, really strange. I think it was like
Ancona and Calabria.
Post World War II, they both kind of fled the war-torn Italy. But my dad spoke Italian up until he was like 6. And then, so his first kind of interactions with outside people, he had to learn English. Yeah. So he was picked on, bullied, called racist names.
I had to learn English.
Oh, I can imagine. But you were 16, didn't you say?
Correct, yeah. I had to learn English.
How did you face any nastiness when you came over here?
Man,
because England was a racist place back then.
It
especially
was,
against Italians.
I was from a different mentality. I didn't have an issue to square up with somebody if that somebody...
It turns out it's the best way to cure bullying.
You know, if that somebody kind of pushed me or prodded me in the wrong direction. At the time, it was just the way that it was. And you know, today I'm a very calm person, I'm a very tranquil person. And I think that these things come from experience, having gone through many things, many experiences of life. And you generally see this, you know, the guy who's making all the noise is generally the guy who's insecure.
Right? And also can't usually fight. And
can't usually fight, because a lot of people have a very misunderstanding of what fighting is. A misconception of their own abilities also, you know. I know exactly where I stand in my realm of fighting, you know. I can box, I can wrestle, I can Thai box, and I can do jiu-jitsu. And believe it or not, I can actually do those all equally. You know, a lot of people today only focus on the fact that I'm a, you know, multiple degree black belt. But I can actually do the other arts as well as I do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
And to be fair, in a snap decision moment, being able to throw a right hook
for sure.
is more handy than being able to pull guard and handle people correctly.
I think they all of these arts complement each other. You know, when it comes down to fighting, you have to know how to do stand-up fighting as well as ground fighting.
100%.
And you have to know how to wrestle, which is the in-between part.
We have a big debate on YouTube. There's loads of myself and my YouTube friends and creators, which is the most important martial arts. And jiu-jitsu ranks high, but then everyone shits on it and says, well, you can't pull guard in a street fight because you'll get kicked in the head. It's one of those...
It depends who you're training with.
Absolutely, but also it depends on the situation. There's a video that's circulating on the internet at the moment, a big black guy, a little white guy, he sneaks around, takes his back, drops to the floor, drags him and gets a short choke, cranks him forward, puts him unconscious, and it's done. And he's like, I'll let you go in 3 seconds. And he's out.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And it's so beautiful. Yeah. But at the same time, if the other guy had a friend, he would have got kicked in the head. But then again, he might not have gone for that choke. He might have done something completely different. But it's being able to adapt on the fly.
So here's the biggest misconception, that jiu-jitsu today is not self-defense. Jiu-jitsu starts from self-defense. Jiu-jitsu is born in Rio through street fighting. So the Gracies originally that learned jiu-jitsu from Maeda, those guys kept testing this. And the way that they tested it was very often in the street. Yeah.
Well, this is one of the other things, is like anyone can get lucky throwing a punch. You can get caught with, anyone has a set of hands, but you're never going to land a lucky triangle. If you have no idea how to fight, if you've never done jiu-jitsu before, you're never going to luckily escape a rear naked choke.
I think,
So having the knowledge is way better than not having it.
I think training with the right people is key. I do not start any class without self-defense. It is the first thing that I teach in every class, every day. Self-defense. And the other thing is, I do understand the kicking range, the punching range, the wrestling range. And in the school here, we have Muay Thai, we have MMA, and we also have a wrestling class that I personally teach every Friday. Now, when you're being taught the system correctly, you're not going to have an issue with self-defense. You're not going to seek to go and do something else for self-defense. Because guess what? Pulling guard is for competition.
Yeah.
Pulling guard isn't for self-defense.
I know, it's always the line that people use.
You know, if the professor and the student both understand self-defense, well, somebody's getting flipped on their head.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, when it comes to self-defense.
It's one of, like, I help a friend of mine who has a taekwondo school. Basically, this is a long story kind of short. I attended a couple of his classes. He sort of saw that I was doing MMA. He invited me along to one of his seminars.
Yeah.
I sparred with 5 of his black belts. We did a Shark Tank. Their main black belt went first. I stepped in for 1 minute. I kind of beat the shit out of him. I was like, okay, these guys aren't really
That's not supposed to happen.
That's not supposed to happen. So then the next round they put me in the middle. I leg kicked the crap out the first guy, winded the second one, the third one came in, and then the coach went, okay, taekwondo rules only. So no punching to the head, no takedowns. I was like, okay, fine. So I hit him with a question mark kick, lead question mark kick, and I knocked him unconscious. And I mean, like, he stood there and he fell backwards, his head hit the floor, he fell off the mat, he cut his head, he was unconscious for like 2 minutes. He was off work for 2 weeks, we called an ambulance.
Oh my God.
It was bad. And the whole time I was just like, this is not how a martial arts kind of meant to be. This is too easy, but it's also too strict. And then from then on, the main coach asked me to help him build a syllabus with more elements of reality.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a shame that I was able to undo the sport. And he's been coaching, he's a 3rd Dan black belt in Taekwondo. Yeah. And I beat the shit out of all the students with using limited MMA.
Yeah.
And it was kind of disappointing. And since then, they've changed up their entire syllabus to include more self-defense, but it's still not good enough.
Yeah.
And but that's because they don't spar hard enough. Like you said, if you're doing Muay Thai and you're feeling that impact, that pressure,
you know what,
and understanding that where your baseline, when they go right, round go, you can level off your adrenaline and learn to read someone's movement, which in Taekwondo they don't do. It's just
at the same
instantly
time,
start bouncing around.
If I have to take your leg kick, if I have to take your punch, if I have to take your takedown, the other thing that it's doing, it's building my resilience physically, mentally. My character is getting shaped.
If it was like a video game and you have like health bars, you know, like the first time I hit that guy with a leg kick, his health bar disappeared 50%. He looked at me like, oh. I was like, dude, it was an inside leg kick off of the lead foot. Okay. It wasn't hard, but he instantly went, pulled his leg. He was like, oh shit. I was like, dude. Yeah. Knee down.
Completely put himself out of position.
He had no idea. No idea.
This is the thing, and this is, you know, for me, it comes right back to hard to beat, impossible to beat. You know, you physically, everybody can train, but you got to make sure that you are evolving physically, mentally, in every aspect. Very recently, there was the latest news is that Rickson Gracie has Parkinson's disease.
Oh no!
Right, and Master Rickson Gracie is, as far as I'm concerned, the ultimate samurai still today. Man, Master Rickson. If you were to compare Master Rickson to Jiu-Jitsu today, he is the equivalent of Gordon Ryan, Roger Gracie, and the UFC champion right now. That's what he was considered of in his era. You have to understand. Oh, I can imagine. Every era has its own competitors, its own people that compete. So we can never compare an athlete of 50 years ago, 30 years ago, to the athlete of today. Each athlete can only deal with what he had at that time in front of him. But Master Rickson was an amazing nogi grappler. He was a Vale Tudo champion, and he was also a gi champion. So he was considered like the GOAT of all of those areas back in those days. Master Hickson's physical training took him down a path of mental training, mental fortitude, mental understanding of himself, his surroundings, and his own spirituality. I gotta be honest with you, I was emotional the other day when I watched the interview in Portuguese from Kira Gracie to Master Hickson, talking about him and Parkinson's. She asked him, how did you receive this news of being diagnosed with Parkinson's? He said, to be honest with you, he goes, I take it as a gift from God.
Wow.
Right, I take it as a gift from God, because he says, I'm very happy with my life and everything that I've achieved, but I have overcome so much that this is given to me from God for him to see how I'm going to react to this next challenge.
Yeah, Parkinson's nasty.
Right?
I had a nan that had Parkinson's, and she was very frail and wasn't active, so watching it debilitate her was pretty horrendous. But like I said, someone like Hickson, who's the mental fortitude and the physicality of what he's been used to.
But the point of all of this, and me bringing up Master Hickson, is the way that mentally he has chosen to accept and head the challenge head on. You know, he says, I accept it as a gift from God for him to see how I'm going to deal with it. And it takes somebody very special.
It's scary. That's
very
a
special,
very strong-minded.
Isn't it?
When most people get essentially what is a terminal diagnosis, is not, you don't recover from Parkinson's. It only gets worse.
It's degenerative.
Yeah, degenerative. That's the correct word. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, that's a. How old is he now?
Master Hickson, I believe, is 67 or 68. He's the same age as Master Carlos Gracie Jr. And you know, these are the two differences, right? Master Carlos Gracie Jr. always trained well, trained hard, super technical. Whereas Master Hickson always trained ready to fight anybody, anywhere, anytime,
violence first,
any style, anything, right? So Master Hickson speaks about being ready to fight anyone at any time for 40 whole years of his life. There's a price to pay for that.
Yeah.
And the price is, you know, he has several hernias, he has several traumas on his body. Whereas you look at Master Carlos, he looks like a young man.
Yeah.
He looks better than I do, man. Physically, he looks incredible.
Again, this comes down to the lifetime of your game. Like if you start young and you build up the muscles, whilst you're young and pliable and flexible, you can kind of rebound from any early injuries. And then as you get on, you get more advanced, and then you can slow your game down and you can develop all that tightness and all that pressure which comes with a higher grade of belt. With something like me, because I'm a spazzy white belt to an extent, I still look for gaps that aren't there. I still try, and if I see a gap, I'll shoot for it too fast. I won't get my position perfect before I look to move something. I can't feel the balance of someone just yet. I can do if I'm going to do like a motive sweep or something, but if I'm just slowly, like the amount of times I've been on top of Kev and he just lifts a leg, traps an arm, and I'm like, why am I upside down? It's just like,
leverage.
Fuck. Whereas I haven't got that quite yet, but that's also why I've hurt myself. I broke my neck from a cross collar choke. Should have tapped, pathetic. Dude's a beast though. Like, arms huge. So there's a running joke in the gym. If you get if you armbar this guy, he'll just bicep curl you. He's that big. Like, it's ridiculous. Like even Kev's just like, you can't armbar him. Big Phil is just crazy. So he had me cross collar, pulled me in, and I tried to use my body weight to break the grips. And I basically just threw my head back and snapped my own neck over my own gi. Wow. Yeah, it was a stupidly freak accident.
Yeah, unheard of, to be honest.
Should have just been smart.
Unheard of.
Yeah,
I've been in jiu-jitsu, you know, for many years and never heard of it.
I know, it's like a running joke in the gym that Joey will break his own neck. So I cracked 2 vertebrae in my neck. I put my spinal cord 15% in, a disc 15% of my spinal cord. I lost all feeling in my hands for like 3 months. I couldn't do any recording, filming. It was pretty shitty to be fair. I fell into a bit of depression. I got a bit fat. And then I came back in 6-7 months later, tried to go all in.
It doesn't work like that.
And then Kev had me in mount, and I was trying to buck his weight off. I popped my hips, and my groin popped, and herniated my groin. So I had another 3 months off. It's just silly things.
I really don't train.
The mind of a dumb little white belt.
No, but I don't train like that, and I don't encourage that type of environment of training either. I mean, the way that I like to train is that I want to train. I have a friend of mine, Terry Hughes, and Terry Hughes trains the most in this academy. What do I mean by he trains the most in this academy? Terry Hughes manages to train twice a day, 3 times a day, every day. And how he does that is that he keeps it playful. He's able to keep his training playful. And guess what? His technique is going through the roof. His jiu-jitsu is absolutely great. And he's not a young guy.
Yeah.
He's 46 himself.
Yeah. I never hurt myself under aggression. I'm never like scrabbling. It was Kev simply got his hooks in. He put a bit of downward pressure on me. I tried to pop him up and my guts popped. Same with the cross collar choke. He pulled me in. I tried to bang and it went. I don't roll aggressive and I do protect myself. If someone grabs hold of something, I'm like, yeah, fine. I don't have no ego. We'll go again. Absolutely fine.
Exactly.
But as now I do have an element of caution, which is okay, but it does stop me from doing things like Granby rolls. If someone takes my back in turtle, I won't forward roll onto it because I don't want to put too lots of body weight pressure on the back of my neck. So I find myself limited with what I can kind of do.
But that's okay because look, jiu-jitsu will find its own path within the body and the ability that your body has. Okay, because look, it doesn't mean that if you cannot do the splits or the lotus, that you're not going to be any good at jiu-jitsu. It really doesn't mean anything like that. That is a very limiting mindset. And if I'm going to look at your Granby roll, that would be a limiting mindset too. Jiu-jitsu will become what it needs to become for every body that it is presented with. So I have students who are in their 70s. I have a student of mine in Italy who was a school friend of my father's. Every time I go back, he picks up his gi, he comes to my garage and we train, right? What am I expecting from my father's friend? I don't expect any Granby rolls, I don't expect anything insane, but guess what? He puts his gi on, he gets on the mat, and we have that lovely exchange of jiu-jitsu. So what my point is here is that he can do jiu-jitsu, but to what his body allows him to do. You can do jiu-jitsu to what your body allows you to do. And the same for me and the next person and the next person, you know. But it doesn't take away the fact that if the jiu-jitsu that each individual is being taught is strong, fundamentally sound jiu-jitsu, then you can't be effective. You can be very effective, regardless of the limitation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jean-Jacques Machado.
Yeah, well, fundamentals first, isn't it? That's
Jean-Jacques is a black belt from Master Carlos Gracie Jr.
He's only got one hand.
Right. Well, Jean-Jacques was is still one of the most unbelievable jiu-jitsu practitioners I've ever seen. So there's your answer to those things.
Absolutely,
you know?
Yeah. Where do you see yourself going forward?
Where do I see myself going forward?
Obviously, you have revolutionized jiu-jitsu in the Southwest. 22 schools, was it 22 or 24?
I think it's about 22, 24. I really have
inside essentially an 80 square mile radius of Bath. Probably even smaller than that, to be fair.
The Southwest.
It was in the Southwest, yeah. It's like you said, it's the most highly dense population of jiu-jitsu in the world.
I think so, yeah.
Which
I think so.
is an unbelievable achievement.
In terms of miles.
Yes, of course, yeah. But also in terms of the diversity of the people. It's not just like in Brazil where you just got, it's the national sport kind of thing. It's in amongst people of all demographics. Like I said, you've got old people, teachers, young kids coming through. And your kids' academies are flying all the way around the Southwest, which is bringing through a whole new generation of people. And it's the first time a strict martial art has ever had this relevance. Karate, taekwondo, and that kind of stuff, it can be McDojo-y. It 100% can. You have coaches that are just teaching whatever the hell they want. Half of them can't fight. Half of them have no reason to fight or have ever been in any form of professional competition. If it has, it's under a rule set, which is tippy-tappy-toe bollocks and punch in the air. You can't hide in jiu-jitsu. So the fact that there's never going to be an MMA franchise, I don't think, because I think the sport is too varied and the personalities are too varied and the styles are too varied. Like if you were to have
there's too much ego.
There's too much ego, but also if you were to have an MMA school which is run by Brad, for instance, it's going to be very boxing heavy and his jiu-jitsu will probably be a bit lazy because that's who he is, that's what he's like. Whereas if you have someone that's run by Paul Craig up in Scotland, it's going to be very jiu-jitsu heavy and very strike.
For sure.
So there's no way to build a syllabus which encapsulates all of those parts.
Where do I see myself in the future? What am I working for? I'm working for jiu-jitsu, longevity. I love jiu-jitsu. I love Gracie Barra. I love my professors and my friends and people around me. This is how I started. This is how it will end. It will end with me being on the mats until there is...
Die a happy man.
That's it. I do jiu-jitsu because I love jiu-jitsu. You know, I want to be involved with the growth of jiu-jitsu, expansion of jiu-jitsu, evolution of jiu-jitsu. I want to see the next generation do better things than I did. You know, and I did some pretty cool things, thank God.
You're leading the way from the front, mate.
I had some really great times and, you know, many stories that we just scratched the surface with today. But like I said, my involvement with Gracie Barra is solid. I'm the regional collaborator for the region here. And it's only going to get bigger and stronger, you know, because my mindset is hard to beat, impossible to break. I will continue with my journey. I will continue growing. Just this year, I opened 3 schools.
There's not many people that can say they've done that.
You know, in the last year, I opened 3 schools.
And they're not little academies either. They're beautifully well done. You have a standard of school which most people can't even ascertain or even think about. Most people think, oh, I'll open a school, it'll be a couple of mats in a sports hall with a limited class schedule with a couple of brand new students who don't have any idea. Whereas every school you open, people flood to it, and people of all ages and brands and grading and levels.
It's not what I want to do.
And seminars you hold as well.
I want to have the best people teaching people, right? There's no place today for blue belts to be teaching classes, you know. And if you have that, you need to adjust that. I want to lead from the front, have a solid structure of great professors teaching the students what they need to learn. Unfortunately today, you know, many places have a disorientated idea of what it is to be a jiu-jitsu teacher. You know, everybody has this crazy image that they're looking for on Instagram and wanting to be important, and it's the last thing I want to do. What I want to do is make sure that you or your son or your daughter or your wife or whoever ends up training in my school has the most experience, the most incredible experience ever. And is going to want to continue to do that, and is going to want to tell their friends to do that and bring their friends' children to do that, not because...
financial incentive.
Exactly, not financially, not because there's a financial incentive, but because the experience that you're going to have in one of my schools, our schools, because I actually never say my schools. I hate that word. I hate individualizing the school as being mine. When I talk to my students, I always say our schools, right? Because I want each and every student to feel like coming into one of our schools is their home. And if that's the case, they'll respect the school, they'll respect each other, and they will grow. They will grow.
It's a very, very unique perspective, and I think it's the right one, 100%. I think that this sport, one, obviously, is based around the respect of your opponent and each other, whereas the likes of MMA, like I said, there's a lot of ego.
MMA's different.
Like, I was in Birmingham for the BKB press event the other day, and it was a shithole. Oh my God, the gym was disgusting. It was horrendous. It was just, and it's like, I get that sometimes you need that grit. Some people like the kind of stone weights and slinging sledgehammers and stuff, and there's an element of pump and iron kind of mentality to that. But how good can you get if there's rats running around the floor? And whereas this is, like I said, it's a place for everybody.
This is
premium. Yeah, exactly.
You know, you want to walk in here and you want to feel great about being here.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You don't want to freeze in the corner in the winter whilst your child is training
that makes
jiu-jitsu.
People hard. That's the excuse that MMA boys use.
No, I don't believe in that. I think
it'll toughen you up.
Today we need to deliver not only a high standard of jiu-jitsu and martial arts, but also a high standard academy.
Yeah.
you know, I want to spend time in my schools.
Yeah, definitely.
I want to be able to go to my academy and relax, feel like I want to be there.
Provide an environment for other people, nice sofas, nice chairs, places
Right.
where you can come and spend a day, not just...
Spend a day.
Yeah, exactly.
Spend a day. You know, we're very lucky. I've had people come from all over the world to spend time with us. You know, we had people come from America, spend a month and a half with us, training on my mats every single day of the week. And we're talking about, you know, multiple-time world champions. Next week, at the end of this week, 2 of my students are going to be coming over from Italy to spend 10 days with us. And they're coming here to spend 10 days with us, train every day at the schools, and take part in Carlos's seminar, which we have an amazing seminar coming up with Professor Carlos
I'm going to be
Jr.
there. I'm going to be there.
Bring your camera, you always do your thing.
Always,
do your thing.
always.
You know, we have this amazing regional gathering of the Southwest UK schools, where we're going to be doing an incredible seminar with Professor Carlos, who's a 4-time world champion. Following the seminar, we're going to be doing a grading, black belt grading, and then we're going to have a barbecue, Joe.
Sounds fucking great. Sounds really good. I really can't wait to get there.
Looking forward
and
to it
hopefully I'm
myself.
looking for a little promotion myself.
I hope so.
Oh, yeah.
I hope Professor Kev
yeah.
has finally decided to give you that
Yeah,
blue belt.
absolutely, yeah. So we're going to wrap it up there, guys. I hope you
All
guys
right,
have enjoyed the conversation between me and Salvo. Check out all the links below for Salvo's schools. Like, subscribe to the video, and we'll see you next time. Peace out. Cheers, buddy.
Thank you, man.
Good applause to my
Appreciate it.